Every day, I post a new video going deep into the stories of the legends from Hollywood's golden age. The real stories behind the glamour and fame. If this kind of old-school drama interests you, hit that subscribe button, give a like, or leave a comment. It's free and really helps me out. Now, let's get into today's story. When you look at Mel Brooks, you're not just seeing a man. You're looking at the living history of comedy itself. He's 98 years old now, a real survivor of his time. A man who has outlived his wife, his best friends, and almost every legend he once worked with. He's the guy who made the world laugh until it cried. The man who ate dinner entrees every night with Carl Reiner. The two of them watching Jeopardy until Carl's final days. But yesterday, when cameras caught Mel outside his quiet, hidden home where he spent his later years mostly retired, there was no laughter, no sparkle in his eyes, no funny comment to lighten the mood. He just looked like a man who finally had the weight of a whole century pressing down on him hard. For days, headlines have been spreading like crazy. Rob Reiner, a name connected to Hollywood royalty, caught in a story darker than anyone imagined. The brutal details, the shocking arrest of his son, Nick. A family empire breaking apart in one violent night. The whole town can't stop talking. But through all the noise, court dates, news reports, endless guesses, Mel Brooks said nothing, not a word. And that silence was louder than anything else in Hollywood. Because everyone knows Mel wasn't just Rob's father's best friend. He was family. Uncle Mel, the man who changed Rob's diapers, the mentor who watched him grow from a kid to one of the most respected directors alive. So when Mel finally opened his doors to a single trusted journalist, no cameras, no flashing lights, just a tape recorder between them, he finally started to speak. This wasn't some polished press release. It felt like a confession, raw and heavy, the kind that completely changes your picture of what happened inside that Brentwood house. Mel didn't start with the crime. He started with guilt. Guilt that's been sitting on his chest for years. He sank into his armchair, hands shaking, not from age, but from a pain he's been holding back, a quiet storm he's kept inside for too long. He said, "People keep describing this as a tragedy, a sudden break, a freak accident." But Mel's eyes got sharp and watery as he pushed back hard. According to him, this wasn't an accident, and it wasn't sudden, not even close. "We watched a slow-motion wreck for a decade," he said. "And we let it roll, because we loved Rob too much to tell him straight that he was making a mistake." That line hit like a hammer. Here's where it hurts. Mel Brooks, the guy everyone calls gentle, admitted that the small group of people who really cared for Rob and Michelle believed Nick Reiner was a danger to himself and others. A situation ready to explode if it wasn't handled right. But Mel didn't describe a monster. He described something harsher. Parents whose love got twisted into the very thing that left them open to harm. Love used in ways that went wrong and broke them down. It didn't happen overnight. It was years of hope, denial, and looking the other way, piece by piece. Then Mel described one Sunday, about 6 months ago, a scene stuck in his mind. Rob came over the same way Carl once did. But this time, he barely touched his food and couldn't sit still. He paced like a man who felt hunted in his own house, trapped by his own famous last name and the chaos under his roof. Rob told him Nick had come back to the Brentwood house after another stay in rehab that didn't work, and the tension at home was terrible. But this time, it was different. The boy, though he was a grown man in his 30s, had changed completely. He wasn't just using drugs again. Mel said Rob described him as paranoid, unstable, and completely unpredictable. The kind of tension that makes you sleep with one eye open. Rob confessed he'd started locking his bedroom door every night. Just think about that for a second. Rob Reiner, the man who built his whole life and reputation on love, family, and open communication, was locking himself away from his own son. When Mel asked him why he didn't call the police, or at least get a restraining order, Rob's answer sent a chill through the air. A sentence that still feels heavy in Mel's living room. "I promised Michelle I wouldn't give up on him," Rob said quietly. "If I kick him out, he dies on the street. If I keep him here, maybe I can save him." Hearing that, Mel said his heart sank. Then anger took over. He slammed his hand down on the armrest as he remembered it. He told Rob straight up that what he was doing wasn't saving his son. It was sheltering danger. But Rob wouldn't listen. That Reiner stubbornness kicked in. The same strong drive that made him a brilliant director, obsessed with getting the perfect shot, take after take. But when that kind of determination gets tied to a person with addiction who is getting worse, it's not artistic anymore. It's deadly. And here's the part that really hurts. Mel's big news wasn't just about the violence that destroyed everything. It was about what came before it. The emotional and money problems that slowly ate away at them from the inside. Everyone sees the fame, the fortune, the Castle Rock name. They think that kind of money fixes everything. But Mel revealed that for the last 2 years, that house wasn't a mansion anymore. It was a pressure cooker. Rob and Michelle were drained, emotionally wrecked, and the constant bailouts and breakdowns were slowly using up their energy and money. It wasn't that Rob and Michelle were running out of money. Far from it. The problem was the non-stop pressure, the emotional blackmail that just wouldn't stop. Mel said Nick wasn't just asking for money. He was demanding it, saying it was payback for every time he felt hurt in his childhood. He turned his parents' open-minded, progressive values against them, turning guilt into a weapon and calling it payment for his pain. He said his trauma deserved millions. Not forgiveness, not healing, but cold, hard cash. Mel described it as manipulation so sharp, it was almost scarily clever and clear. Rob would come to him with tears streaming, showing text after text filled with poison. Messages where Nick blamed him for everything, his addiction, his failed career, even his unhappiness. And yet the very next day, Rob would give in. He'd buy him a new car, pay for an apartment, fund some half-baked project just to keep things calm. Mel had a name for it, the Hollywood disease. That dangerous idea that money fixes pain, that if you just pour enough cash, care, and picture-perfect hope into something, it'll all end neatly, like a movie. Rob believed he could direct his son's recovery the same way he directed The Princess Bride, by setting the scene, adjusting the light, and believing the right script could save him. But life doesn't take directions, and it sure doesn't follow a script. Mel, who spent his lifetime studying the pattern of tragedy through the lens of comedy, said he saw the final act forming, and it scared him. He told the interviewer about a holiday gathering last year, small and quiet, just family. Nick was there, and Mel swore the air in that room was so tense, it felt like one wrong word could make it all blow up. Mel said he couldn't shake the way Nick was watching his father that night. Not with warmth, not with love, but with something cold and calculating, like a predator sizing up his prey. It sent a chill through him. There was this one moment when Rob made a classic joke about himself, the kind only he could pull off. and the room burst into laughter. Everyone except Nick. Nick didn't smile, didn't even blink. He just stared, fixed, tense, and silent. Later that night, Mel couldn't keep quiet anymore. He pulled Rob aside, his gut screaming that something was wrong. This was the conversation, Mel said, that's haunted his sleep every night since the tragedy. He grabbed Rob by the shoulders. He even acted it out during the interview, his hands shaking, and told him, "Robbie, you need to get him out. He doesn't look at you with love. He looks at you with ownership." The way Mel told it, the words came out desperate, like a man trying to stop a train he knew was about to crash. But Rob, sweet, brilliant Rob, pulled away, hurt by the warning. "You sound like the critics," he told Mel. "You don't know him like I do. He's in pain." And that broke Mel completely. During the interview, he couldn't hold it together. Tears streamed as he talked about the little boy he'd once watched grow up. The one who used to sit cross-legged on the floor, laughing with Carl Reiner, completely innocent. That same boy had become a man who couldn't tell the difference between love and control. And it shattered Mel to admit he'd seen it coming. Mel said he feels he failed, not just as a friend, but as the last older father figure left from that golden era of comedy, the one still standing after all the greats were gone. He said he thought it was his duty to protect what was left of that legacy, to protect Rob. And he failed because he didn't make the call himself, because he stayed silent when it mattered most. But the moment that truly shocked everyone wasn't about regret. It was about the night itself. The timeline the police gave the press sounds neat and clinical. Times, wounds, addresses, evidence. But Mel revealed something they didn't know. He said he was there, in a way, because Rob called him. It was late, long after midnight. Mel had already gone to bed when his phone lit up with Rob's name. And that call, he said, changed everything. The phone rang in the middle of the night, cutting through the silence like an alarm, and Mel froze. He almost didn't pick up. Said something in him just knew the call wasn't casual. When he finally answered, Rob's voice came through barely above a whisper, trembling and low. He wasn't calling to chat or complain. He was calling to say goodbye. Even though he never said those words out loud, Rob whispered, "He's spiraling again. He's screaming about the will. He thinks we're cutting him out." You could hear the panic under his voice, that quiet fear of a man trapped in his own home. Mel told him urgently, "Get out of there, Robbie. Get in the car. Just drive. Come here." And then came the line that stops every listener cold. The one that pulls this story out of the headlines and drops it straight into tragedy. Rob said, softly, "I can't leave Michelle. She's in the room with him. She's trying to calm him down. If I go, he'll turn it all on her." That's when it hit Mel. Rob wasn't staying because he didn't see the danger. He stayed because love wouldn't let him run. Rob Reiner knew exactly what kind of fire he was walking back into, and he went anyway to protect his wife. That was the last time Mel Brooks ever heard his voice. The media rushed to paint Nick as pure chaos, a violent outburst in human form. But Mel, through tears, said that wasn't the full story. He talked about the shadow, the one Nick could never escape. The shadow of Carl Reiner, the comedy genius. The shadow of Rob Reiner, the Hollywood powerhouse. And then there was Nick, third in line under a family name so huge it left him no room to breathe. That kind of legacy, Mel said, is heavy, And if you don't have the strength for it, it'll crush you. Mel said Nick wasn't talentless. He had ideas, creativity, even moments of brilliance. But he wanted the applause without the hard work. And when the movie industry didn't welcome him with open arms, he turned bitter, blaming that Reiner shadow for everything. His failure, his anger, even his misery. He convinced himself that his father's success had stolen his own chance at happiness. Mel called it a rot. Something that creeps in slowly, invisible at first. Not loud, not obvious, but eating everything from the inside out until there's nothing left but ruin. From the street, the Brentwood house looked perfect. Trimmed lawns, holiday lights ready to glow. Picture-perfect vibes. But inside, Mel said the rot had already eaten through the family's core, and he was furious at the system around them, the so-called support system that kept making everything seem okay. He said there were therapists, doctors, and consultants on the payroll who downplayed the danger, keeping it neat and clinical instead of real and urgent. According to Mel, these professionals told Rob and Michelle that tough love was old-fashioned and that radical acceptance was the way to go. And he called them accomplices without blinking. He said they took Rob's money to tell him exactly what he wanted to hear, that his son was just sick, not dangerous, and that patience would fix it. They cleaned up the fear with soft words and calm reports, while the pressure kept building behind closed doors. They gave clinical names to behavior that scared people, giving tidy labels to dangerous spirals like it was paperwork, not a risk. They told him it was a disorder, Mel said, his voice dropping low. But they didn't tell him it could be a death sentence. That line hit like a hammer because it wasn't a theory anymore. It was real life, and it was deadly. This, Mel said, is why he's talking now. Not for headlines, not for court drama. Because in his mind, the trial is just a formality and the evidence is clear. What he wants is the truth of his friend's life laid out plain, not some random crime label stuck on his name. He wants Rob remembered as a husband with a broken heart long before any weapon was used. A man who stood his ground because he believed being a father meant protecting even when it cost everything. Mel's story cuts deep. It forces us to face the raw edge of parental love. That line between devotion and destruction. People always say, I would die for my kids. But Rob Reiner didn't just say it. He lived it. And it cost him everything. The tragedy, as Mel put it, is that his death didn't save his son. It only locked in his downfall, sealing a fate that could have been stopped years ago if anyone had dared to see the truth. As the conversation wound down, Mel's energy changed. The fire faded into a heavy, aching quiet. He looked around his living room, surrounded by memories. Posters from Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. Black and white photos of a smiling Anne Bancroft, his lifelong partner, now gone. He looked, Mel admitted, like a man stranded on an island made of ghosts. He said, the hardest part isn't the anger anymore. It's the silence. The phone doesn't ring. No more Sunday dinners, he murmured. The link to Carl is gone. I'm the last one. His voice broke as he said he has to live knowing he saw it coming and still couldn't stop it. That kind of guilt doesn't fade. It stays like smoke in a closed room. Mel spoke softly about the upcoming funeral. Private, quiet, just family. He said he plans to speak, not to perform. No jokes, he said. Just truth. The same truth he told that reporter. And the truth he wants Hollywood to finally hear. He wants every powerful father, every rich mother in this town to stop hiding behind therapy buzzwords and public relations smiles, to really look at their kids and see what's happening before it's too late. He said Rob's death should be a loud wake-up call, a flare shot into the dark, warning that you can't love the violence out of someone, no matter how hard you try. Mel Brooks, the man who's made the world laugh at dictators, death, and absurdity, has now given us his most serious story yet. One that dares to ask how far love should go before it destroys everything in its path. But this time, Mel said, there's no punchline, no irony left to find. He can't twist this one into comedy, because there's nothing funny here. No satire, no silver lining, just the brutal truth of a family torn apart from the inside out. As the journalist started packing up to leave, Mel reached out and grabbed his arm. His eyes sharp and desperate, he had one more thing to say. Something he needed to get off his chest. Maybe to clear his conscience. Maybe to warn whoever's next. He brought up the enablers again. The ones who kept the chaos alive. He said Nick had a crowd of so-called friends, hangers-on who lived off Rob's kindness and money. They weren't there to help. They were there to feed Nick's false beliefs, to keep the resentment burning hot. Mel said they used Rob's cash to party, to drink, to laugh, all while fanning the flames that would end up destroying the family. His voice cracked when he said Nick held the weapon, but a lot of people sharpened the blade. That line hung in the air like a final judgment. This isn't the Mel Brooks the world knows. Not the entertainer, not the man with 1,000 jokes. This was Mel the witness, the survivor sitting in a room filled with ghosts and telling the ugliest truth he's ever spoken. His words took away the shine of the Reiner legacy and showed the real, bleeding cost underneath the glamour. It's a harsh reminder that behind the tall gates of Brentwood, behind the trophies and Hollywood smiles, these are still just people, flawed, fragile, and breakable. People who love too hard, who trust too much, and who pay the price when love turns blind. So, when the trial begins in January, and you see Nick Reiner sitting there in that orange jumpsuit, don't just scroll past the headline. Remember Mel Brooks, 98 years old, sitting in that quiet chair, crying for the little boy he once bounced on his knee, and for the best friend he couldn't save. Remember that the truth, no matter how loud the media shouts it, is never as simple as a police report. The truth, Mel said, isn't a single moment or headline. It's built out of small choices, quiet warnings ignored, and doors left unlocked, because closing them felt too final, too cruel. It's all those moments we brush off, until they pile up into something unstoppable. And now that Mel's silence has finally broken, the echo of what he's confessed is going to haunt Hollywood for a long time. It hits like a chill, a reminder that even the people who've spent their whole lives writing happy endings sometimes end up trapped in stories too dark to rewrite. Rob Reiner's death, Mel insists, isn't just a crime story. It's a warning, a mirror held up to the limits of love. A message from a man who's seen everything, who survived generations of legends, and who wishes with everything in him that he hadn't lived to see this chapter. The interview didn't end with a dramatic line or a joke. It ended with a sigh, heavy and tired. Mel turned toward the window, staring out at the California sunlight that seemed way too bright for a day filled with shadows. His voice was quiet, but his posture said everything. Frail body, steel resolve. He's done protecting the image, done hiding the ugly parts for the sake of legacy. Now he's protecting one thing only: the truth. And as Mel Brooks tells it, that truth cuts deep. Rob Reiner didn't just die. He was slowly consumed by the very life he tried to keep together, swallowed by love, loyalty, and guilt, until there was nothing left to save. And that's a tragedy that no time, no therapy, and no laughter will ever fix. Now it's on us, the ones listening, the ones watching, to take that in, to look at our own families, our own blind spots, and ask what we're ignoring out of love. Because Mel Brooks has done something brutally brave. He's told the raw, unpolished truth about a man the world loved, even when it tore his heart apart to say it. And if Mel Brooks, at 98 years old, standing at the end of his life, feels he must shout this warning into the noise, then ignoring it would be the biggest mistake of all. The loss of Rob Reiner isn't just another Hollywood tragedy. It's a deep wound carved into the heart of the industry itself. But through all the heartbreak, Mel Brooks's words might be the only lesson strong enough to stop something like this from happening again. The investigation continues. The trial is coming up. But to Mel, the verdict is already in. The system failed. The doctors failed. And even that endless, beautiful Reiner love, the kind that once held a family together, failed too. It's a harsh truth, but it's the one Mel's been forced to carry. And now it's the one we all have to face. As the news cycle keeps spinning and Hollywood moves on to its next headline, remember this image. An old man sitting alone in his quiet room, surrounded by memories of laughter and light, now holding the weight of a family dynasty's end. It's a chilling reminder that fame doesn't protect anyone, not from heartbreak, not from betrayal, and not from the chaos that can grow inside your own home. Rob Reiner's legacy will always include the films, the timeless classics, the laughter, the art that changed movies forever. But thanks to Mel Brooks, it also carries something even more powerful. A final, devastating lesson about love, denial, and the dangerous silence that comes with trying too hard to fix what's already broken. The silence has ended. The shock is real. And the reality is more painful than any script or fiction could ever be. This is the story Mel Brooks had to tell, and the story the world needed to hear, no matter how much it hurts to listen. Because in the end, truth is the only thing that truly honors the dead, and Mel has done just that, honoring his best friend by refusing to let the world turn his tragedy into another empty headline. So let this story stay with you. Let it make you think. Let it make you feel. And if it hit you as deeply as it did Mel, then don't let it fade away. Like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment.